The human escort was never meant to survive the journey. Everyone in the Silver Hall understood that truth, even if none of them dared to say it aloud. Cale Thorne stood alone at the center of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back, posture rigid from years of military discipline, while hundreds of alien eyes studied him with open disdain. The Illyrians were tall, luminous beings with skin like polished pearl and eyes that shimmered with inner starlight. Their robes floated as if gravity itself bowed to their elegance, and Cale felt painfully solid among them, a rough shape carved from war and scars. He had been chosen precisely because he was expendable. A human mercenary, enhanced but not noble, brave but not important, a creature of muscle and obedience sent to guard the most valuable being in 3-star systems, Princess Seraphil of Illyria. The irony was not lost on him. Princess Seraphil stood on the dais above, her wings folded behind her like living crystal, her expression unreadable as she looked down at Cale. She was said to be the most brilliant strategist of her people, a diplomat who could end wars with a sentence, yet now she was forced to travel through hostile territory, hunted by factions that wanted her blood to destabilize the Illyrian throne. And her escort was a human with a rifle and outdated armor. The court whispered openly, "A human, how insulting. If he dies, it is of no consequence. He will slow her down." Seraphil heard them all, and her lips curved in faint amusement. She descended the steps gracefully and stopped in front of Cale, her eyes finally meeting his. "You are the one they send to protect me?" she asked, her voice calm and melodic. "Yes, Your Highness," Cale replied, his voice steady. She studied his face, the scar running from his temple to his jaw, the cybernetic implants along his neck, the old rifle magnetically locked to his back. "You seem fragile," she said, not unkindly. Cale almost smiled. "Fragile things don't last long in war, Your Highness," he answered. Her gaze lingered for a moment longer before she turned away, dismissing him without ceremony. The mission began an hour later. Their vessel, a sleek diplomatic cruiser, slipped into hyperspace, escorted by drones and automated defense arrays. Cale took his position near the observation corridor, always between the princess and any possible threat. Seraphil watched him from a distance, noting how he never relaxed, how his eyes tracked invisible angles, how his breathing remained controlled even during turbulence. Still, she believed the truth everyone else did. If assassins came, the human would die first. And then they would take her. The attack came sooner than anyone expected. Hyperspace fractured in a scream of alarms. The ship shuddered violently as reality snapped back into place. Red lights flooded the corridor. Multiple breaches detected, the AI announced, its voice suddenly strained. Before Cale could move, the hull exploded inward. Assassins poured through the breach like shadows made of blades and plasma, their armor black and shifting, their weapons humming with lethal intent. Illyrian guards rushed forward, luminous shields flaring, but they were unprepared for the ferocity of the assault. Cale moved without hesitation. He tore the rifle from his back and fired, the old human weapon roaring in defiance of advanced alien tech, kinetic rounds tearing through assassin armor that energy weapons struggled against. One fell, then another. Cale positioned himself directly in front of Seraphil, his body a living wall. "Get behind me," he ordered, not waiting for permission. She hesitated only a fraction of a second before obeying. Blades struck his armor, sparks exploding as his shielding failed, pain flaring across his nerves. He ignored it. Another assassin leapt from the ceiling, aiming directly for the princess. Cale stepped into the strike. The plasma blade sheared through his left arm in a burst of white light. He screamed, but he did not fall. Instead, he grabbed the attacker with his remaining hand and drove his helmet into its face, crushing it. Blood sprayed across the corridor, some of it glowing, some of it human. Seraphil stared in horror as Kale continued fighting, now one-armed, his rifle discarded, his movements savage and precise. A second blade struck, severing his right arm at the shoulder. For a heartbeat, silence fell. The human dropped to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. It is over, Seraphil thought, her chest tightening. Then Kale rose. He used his shoulder to slam into an assassin, using his own body as a weapon, headbutting, kicking, driving his weight forward with pure stubborn will. He positioned himself over Seraphil, even as his life drained away. "Run," he gasped, his voice thick with blood. "I will not abandon you," she said softly, tears streaking down her glowing cheeks. Kale laughed weakly. "Didn't ask you to, princess, just survive." The final assassin charged, blade raised high. Kale threw himself forward, taking the strike directly through his chest. The blade pierced his heart. The assassin froze in surprise as Kale locked his teeth around its throat and tore, killing it even as his own body failed. Kale collapsed, motionless. The corridor was silent, except for the hiss of ruptured systems and Seraphil's quiet sobbing. Illyrian reinforcements arrived moments later, too late to change anything. They found the princess alive, kneeling beside the body of the human escort who was never supposed to matter. Seraphil cradled Kale's head in her hands, glowing tears falling onto his blood-stained armor. "He was supposed to be useless," she whispered, her voice shaking. The medics scanned him and shook their heads. "He is gone," they said. Seraphil screamed then, a sound of grief and fury that echoed through the broken ship. She did not know that deep within Kale's ruined body, something ancient had already begun to stir. Something not human. Something that answered sacrifice with fire. Darkness took him. And in that darkness, Kale dreamed of scales and flame, of claws tearing through steel, of wings unfolding in a sky filled with stars. He dreamed of a power that did not care that his arms were gone. Because when he woke, he would no longer need them. Kale Thorne did not wake gently. He rose from darkness like a drowning man breaking the surface, lungs burning, nerves screaming, consciousness crashing into him all at once. Pain came first, not sharp but vast, an ocean of agony that drowned thought and memory alike. He tried to scream, but no sound came. He tried to move his arms, and panic slammed into him when nothing answered. The memory returned in fragments, blades of plasma, the princess screaming his name, the moment his chest burned like a dying star. "I'm dead," he thought dimly. Then he felt heat. Not the sterile warmth of a medical chamber, but something deeper, older, a furnace roaring beneath his skin. Kale forced his eyes open. White light flooded his vision, then softened into shifting hues of gold and blue as his sight adjusted. He lay suspended in Medea, held upright by a translucent field of energy, naked, except for glowing threads wrapped around his torso and legs. Illyrian healers surrounded him, their wings flared in agitation, their hands moving in complex patterns as streams of light poured into his body. "Impossible," one of them whispered. "His arms are gone," another said, voice trembling. "The regeneration matrix is failing." Kale tried to speak, but his throat burned and only a rasp escaped. The healers startled, several recoiling in shock. "He's conscious," someone shouted. "Shut it down now, before it kills him." The light intensified, pressure building around Kale like the crushing depths of a star. He felt something inside him pushing back, resisting the healing energy, rejecting it violently. The Illyrian technology screamed in protest, alarms chiming in harmonic tones that rattled his skull. Then the field shattered. Kale fell to the floor hard, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. He curled instinctively, or tried to, his mind still expecting arms that were no longer there. Instead, something scraped against the crystal floor. A sound like metal claws dragging across stone. The chamber went silent. Kale froze, heart hammering. Slowly trembling, he looked down. Where his arms should have been, where burned flesh and severed bone should have ended, something else had emerged. Black scales gleamed under the chamber lights, layered and sharp, edged with faint crimson glow like embers beneath obsidian. His hands were no longer hands. They were claws. 5 talons on each limb, curved and serrated, each one longer than a dagger, steam rising faintly from their surface. Kale stared, mind breaking under the sight. "What the hell?" he whispered. The healers backed away in terror, wings flaring wide. "That is not Illyrian biotech," one said, fear shaking their voice. "That is not human either." Kale flexed one claw experimentally, the movement smooth, powerful, terrifyingly natural. He felt strength surge through muscles that had never existed before, tendons coiling with predatory precision. With a careless motion, he scored deep gouges into the crystal floor. Princess Seraphil burst into the chamber then, her presence luminous and commanding even in panic. She froze when she saw him. "Kale," she breathed. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through fog, grounding him, anchoring him to reality. He looked up at her, shame and fear twisting his gut. "Princess, I didn't mean to." She crossed the distance between them without hesitation, ignoring the healer's warnings. "You are alive," she said, tears spilling freely now, her glowing hands trembling as they hovered inches from his scaled limbs. "I watched you die." Kale swallowed hard. "Felt like it," he muttered. She laughed weakly through her tears, a broken sound full of relief. "What happened to you, Kale?" "I don't know," he admitted, voice rough. "I remember fire and something waking up inside me, something that didn't want to let me go." The lead healer approached cautiously, eyes fixed on Kale's claws. "Princess, this being has undergone a transformation beyond our science," they said. "The energy signature is ancient, predating our civilization, predating hyperspace." Seraphil's eyes widened. "Ancient how?" The healer hesitated, then spoke the word like a curse. "Draconic." Silence fell heavier than gravity. "That's not possible," another healer said. "The star dragons vanished before Illyria had cities. They were myths, destroyers of worlds." Kale felt something stir at that word, a low rumble in his chest, like distant thunder answering a call. "Myths don't usually grow back your arms," he said dryly, though fear coiled tight beneath the humor. Seraphil knelt before him, meeting his eyes levelly. "Kale Thorn, you saved my life," she said, her voice steady and absolute. "Whatever you have become, you are under my protection." The healers exchanged uneasy glances. "Princess, if word spreads, the council will demand answers," one warned. "Let them," Seraphil snapped, wings flaring with rare anger. "They sent him to die, and instead he returned reborn. That truth is on them, not him." Kale looked at her, something warm and painful tightening in his chest. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I owe you everything." Days passed in secrecy. Kale was moved to a shielded chamber deep within the Illyrian vessel, guarded not by soldiers, but by Seraphil herself. He learned the limits of his new body, or rather, the lack of them. His claws could slice through alloy like flesh, his grip strength exceeded mech loaders, and heat gathered naturally beneath his scales, radiating outward when his emotions spiked. When he was angry, the air shimmered. When he was afraid, sparks danced across his talons. Sleep brought dreams of wings stretching across galaxies, of firestorms consuming fleets, of a voice like grinding mountains whispering. "Awaken! Claim what was lost." Kale woke each time, drenched in sweat, breathing smoke. Seraphil watched him closely, concern etched into her radiant features. You are fighting something inside you, she observed one night. Yeah, Kale admitted, staring at his claws. And I don't know how long I can keep winning. She placed her hand gently against his scaled forearm, unafraid of the heat. Then you will not fight alone. The ship's AI interrupted them, its tone sharp with urgency. Unknown vessels emerging from hyperspace, hostile signatures confirmed. Seraphil straightened, expression hardening into that of a ruler born for war. They found us, she said. Kale rose slowly to his feet, claws flexing, heat building in his chest. Good, he replied, eyes glowing faintly red. Because I need to know what I am now. And something tells me they're about to find out too. The first enemy ship tore out of hyperspace like a wound opening in the stars. Then a second followed, and a third, their hulls jagged and predatory, marked with the sigils of the Carvax Syndicate. Seraphil stood at the command dais, wings half spread, eyes cold as vacuum. They were never after me alone, she said quietly. They wanted a message. Kale felt the heat in his chest swell, responding to the threat like a living thing. Guess I'm the punctuation, he muttered, flexing his claws. The bridge crew stared at him with a mixture of awe and fear, whispers rippling through the chamber. That's the human. No, that's something else. The first torpedoes struck, rocking the Illyrian cruiser violently, energy shields flaring like a dying sun. Boarding craft inbound, the AI announced. Multiple vectors. Seraphil turned to Kale. You should stay here. He met her gaze, unflinching. That stopped being an option when I woke up like this. A faint smile touched her lips. Then I will trust you with my life again. The boarding pods hit the hull with bone-rattling force, alarms shrieking as corridors decompressed and sealed in rapid sequence. Kale sprinted toward the breach point, boots pounding, claws leaving glowing scratches in the floor with every step. When the first hatch blew inward, he did not slow. The Carvax poured through, towering brutes encased in brutal armor, plasma cannons roaring. Kale met them head-on. He swung his right claw in a wide arc, and steel screamed as armor split open like wet paper. The force of the blow launched the alien backward, smashing it into the bulkhead hard enough to crater it. The others hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Kale inhaled, and fire answered. Flame erupted from his mouth in a torrent of white-gold heat, not a weapon he had trained for, but one his body remembered instinctively. The corridor became an inferno, enemies screaming as armor melted, weapons detonating uselessly in their hands. Illyrian guards stared in stunned silence from behind their shields. He breathed fire, one whispered, reverent and terrified. Kale barely heard them. He was lost in the sensation, the power coursing through him, the clarity of purpose. Destroy the threat. Protect the princess. Maury boarders breached from another corridor, attempting to flank. Kale leapt. The jump carried him impossibly far, claws biting into the ceiling as he rebounded, dropping down among them like a falling star. Claws tore, tails he did not yet possess flicked phantom balance through his spine, and the fight ended in seconds. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of cooling metal. Kale stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving, smoke curling from his jaws. He looked down at his claws, trembling now. I almost lost myself, he admitted quietly. Seraphil arrived moments later, her guards fanning out cautiously. She took in the destruction, then looked at him with something like awe. You saved the ship. Kale shook his head. I scared myself. Before she could answer, the ship lurched violently, far worse than before. Main shields failing, the AI warned. A massive warship emerged from hyperspace, blotting out the stars. The Carvax flagship, Seraphil whispered. Its cannons glowed, charging for a killing blow. Kale felt the voice inside him stir again, louder now, clearer. Claim the sky. He turned to Seraphil, heart pounding. There's something I need to try. She understood instantly, stepping close, lowering her voice. If you do not return, she said softly, I will burn their empire to ash. Kale smiled faintly. Fair deal. He sprinted toward the hangar bay as it depressurized, alarms screaming in protest. The bay doors opened to vacuum, stars blazing beyond. Kale did not slow. He leapt into space. For one terrible second, there was nothing. Then something tore free from his back. Wings. Vast, draconic wings of blackened scale and glowing veins unfurled with explosive force, stabilizing him in the void. Kale roared, soundless in vacuum, but felt deep within his bones. He streaked toward the flagship like a meteor, claws igniting, fire building in his chest until it burned white. Enemy cannons tracked him, firing. The shots bent, distorted, evaporated against an invisible heat haze surrounding his body. Kale slammed into the hull, claws piercing layered armor. He dragged himself forward, tearing open a path, molten metal spraying into space. Inside the flagship, Karvak's soldiers screamed as fire burst through the breach. Kale landed in their command chamber, a living catastrophe. He inhaled once, deeply, and exhaled annihilation. When the Illyrian cruiser's crew looked out moments later, the Karvak's flagship was breaking apart, internal explosions ripping it open from within. Seraphil watched the destruction in stunned silence, hand pressed to the viewport. Please come back, she whispered. A shadow crossed the stars. Kale returned, landing hard in the hangar, wings folding as he collapsed to one knee, exhaustion crashing into him at last. Seraphil ran to him, ignoring protocol, embracing him tightly despite the heat radiating from his body. You flew, she said, breathless. Kale laughed weakly. Turns out, I don't need arms anymore. But as he closed his eyes, the voice inside him whispered again, darker this time. This is only the beginning.